Hey gang, Kevin here, Life22. I know. You're like, where the hell have you been, Kevin? You said you were going to give us more content, and you haven't. And truth be told, I've been trying. I've been formulating a plan for the channel, for a bunch of other things, and then life happens, right? Like, it's been frigid cold out. I run an HVAC business. I'm an HVAC technician for my full-time employer. I have rental properties, frozen water lines, all that other happy stuff. Been jumping on all those different things. And I have a family, so I'm trying. I was painting an apartment all day today, and that's why a lot of you are probably like, man, Kevin's been awfully quiet. And not just for the fact that if you're a follower of the channel, you know, I told you guys I'd be getting you more content throughout the week, and I have, no, not quite delivered, and I apologize. But for the rest of you who are like, man, Kevin's always been outspoken about this house that is right down the road from his house. And I want to let you know that I wanted to let it digest. I have a lot of feelings. I have a lot of thoughts. And I can tell you that the days are brighter on Grub Street. There have been... I've still been sitting back, you know, not sitting back, I've been working, right? But in addition to sitting and working and hearing, and I've been taking in all this information, right? There's been news articles about it. There's been satire news articles about it, which, and I've been reading all the comments and all the different articles across the interwebs over the last couple days. Well, since yesterday, when I saw this, what some people are calling a tragic series of events. And it's not really tragic, it's more inevitable. And people are online, I'm sure, are going to be like, oh, you have a heart, Kevin. They're people too. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, this house, this scourge of our neighborhood, had caught fire yesterday morning. And if you polled every one of the neighbors within like 2 blocks, you'd be hard pressed to find one that wasn't glad that the house caught fire. I talked to one of the neighbors today, and he had pointed out, like, you know, were there any losses in the fire? I said, yes, a dog passed away. And I guess, you know, some organization had to rehome 2 cats. And the sentiment was, had all the residents went up like candles in the house. No humans were injured in this house fire, but had all the residents in the house, you know, and visitors gone up like candles, the saddest part would be that the dog got lost in the flames, and that the 2 cats had to be rehomed. And that seems to be the gist from a lot of the neighbors that I'm talking to anyways. The ones, and a lot of people are going to be like, oh my God, how hideous of a person must you be to think these ways. Listen, I spoke with somebody this morning about this. We have tried everything to get through to these people. That it is not okay to sell drugs in our neighborhood. It's not okay to do drugs in our neighborhood. I'm talking about, we have 25, 30 homes in a 2-block radius of that house. And you say each home has 3 people in it, right? You know, so you say, okay, you know, on average, right? There's some homes that are vacant, and there's some homes that might have 5 or 6. So let's say 4. Yeah, if it's each one of those homes. So I mean, you're talking like 100 people, right? 100 people in a 2-block radius. And this house was bringing in non-residents to our neighborhood in the 20 an hour rate. It's been a little slower recently, but over the summer, it's easily 50 different individuals an hour. An hour coming and going out of this house. And it really upsets your neighborhood when 50% of a 2-block radius influxes in vehicles, on foot traffic, cutting through backyards, stealing property off of people's porches. And so you can only imagine a lot of the grief of the neighbors who have to deal with this. And so it's one of those, hey, I'm sorry that we've gotten hardened to the situation. We've become cold and callous, but it would be true of any neighborhood and most patrons of most neighborhoods if this was in your neighborhood. I have a lot of respect for the police department, and they could not do anything. They actually, they were sorry that they can't do anything. Their hands are tied by New York state law, and it stinks, and we have to deal with it. We have to deal with it as a community. The person I spoke with this morning, I said, we tried everything. My wife and the neighbors would get together and they would document people coming and going. They'd call them out. Some people gave us grief about us calling them, they have a problem. They have a problem. You have to deal with it. They have to deal with it. Well, I'm sorry. No, we don't have to deal with their problem if they're not going to solve it. You can't just sit there and turn a blind eye. Oh, that's, it's the same thing. It's like, oh, well, it's not your business. Well, when it's affecting my kids, when it's affecting our neighborhood, it is my business. That's like saying, Jim the neighbor. I'm trying to think. I don't even have a neighbor named Jim, but Jim the neighbor diddles his son, right? Well, it's like, well, it's none of your business. Well, no, at a certain point, it becomes my business because certain behavior is just unacceptable in our society, and it can be a problem. Like if somebody was a raging alcoholic, you wouldn't allow them to wander the streets and start being loud and obnoxious and catcalling and yelling and harassing neighbors and dropping beer bottles and smashing them and becoming violent and belligerent. If Jim started beating his wife because he was a raging alcoholic, I get to step in too. You know what I mean? And these are the things that we had to deal with. And it wasn't just, there was some people partaking in alcohol, but most of it was meth, heroin, just crack. There was things that the amount of different kinds of drugs that were going in and out of that house, the amount of traffic coming in and out of that house, to the point that there was one guy that lived upstairs. And he got relocated to Salamanca, and he was like, my electrics got shut off because somebody downstairs had theirs shut off. The house is like wired incorrectly. And he was a nice guy. He had been a friend of ours for a while. He was stuck in a crappy building between multiple owners. There was, and I feel for him, and so I gave him a lift. He was like, hey man, I got to get out of here. I found a place. I got to go. And so I gave him a lift to Salamanca. And he got out of there. Him and his dog got out of there. And he's in a nicer neighborhood. Obviously, until today, now our neighborhood's super nice, right? Minus the eyesore building. And actually not even true because, there's still squatters coming and going into that building. As if they're going to find something that didn't make it through the fire. That's the sad reality of it. But he was threatened. They threatened him. They were going to beat the Christ out of him. They knocked his door in when he was at work. They've destroyed his apartment. They did the same thing to a girl downstairs who was in the drug program. She came yelling, crying to us neighbors, hey, what do I do? I have kids. She moved out. So essentially there were no children in the home. None of the people that were coming and going out of that house. I know quite a few of them. They're regulars in Olean. You see them and you're like, yep, nope, she lost her kids. That guy lost his kids. That guy just got out of prison. So none of these people in the house should have been allowed to take care of children. They shouldn't have had any kids living with them. And what the funny part is that this girl that moved out with her kids, she was the only other one besides the guy upstairs who we knew. And there was one girl in the back who have lease agreements. All the remaining people just kind of wandered into vacant apartments and they were squatting. And because the owner's not from in town, people get, they're not squatters because, blah, blah, blah. They've been living here for 30 days. It's just because the landlord didn't notice and somebody's living in a vacant building, 2 vacant apartments. And then what happened is they scared that girl out. They wandered into her apartment. Now, all of a sudden, you've got 3 apartments. And then, and then we helped relocate the last guy. And I know there were evictions going down, and isn't that the case? Because there was one over in East Olean, not East Olean, but like east of center of Olean, and the lady got an eviction notice, and she's in jail right now because the day before they were going to evict her, she set the house on fire, and the apartment still sits vacant, and it's one of those, like, she went to jail over the whole ordeal. It's just, who knows? We don't know what's going to come of this. I'm sure there's fire investigators and stuff like that are looking into this. It's just, it's obnoxious. It's obnoxious. And, like, I could go there. This has been going on for so long. Also, most of you, if you don't know me from this podcast, you also probably don't know, or maybe you do know, that me and my wife and the neighbors in our neighborhood were instrumental in starting the Where the Sirens Aren't. So we started that because the cops couldn't come here. Well, they could, but they really weren't able to do anything because their hands were tied. So we became the group that we're Where the Sirens Aren't. And we became a neighborhood watch motivated group. So that's the only good thing that came from those people living in my neighborhood, was it caused somebody like me, who has a lot of fight in his blood, to say, hey, we're watching you. And they would call out people. So going back to that, the girls would call out people. They would write down names and times and, hey, this person went in with an empty backpack and they came out and it's full, and they're talking openly about the drugs they just got, how they traded food stamps for, just the litany of crimes. And it's like, well, that's just hearsay. Well, that's fine. But you know that they're doing something wrong, and there's nothing anybody can do about it. So I'm sorry that, like, I don't have any remorse for the people in this house. We did one of these podcasts the other day that one on New Year's Day. We got woken up because somebody was beating down the door of the house next door because he was high and drunk and at the wrong residence. It's just, or the fact that we've had these people, they wander the neighborhood. They know that we're monitoring them. We know that we're doing this and we're doing that. We've called them out, like, hey, and we'll be open about it because, like, we know who was operating most of the drugs out of that building. We know the name of the guy who was running the apartment, claiming to have lived there, and then allowing the drug dealer to deal out of that apartment. And that individual who is dealing, the individual who lived in the apartment and pretended to live there, pretended like he had a lease agreement, which is funny because there's no lease agreement documentation. He just happened to wander into an apartment and claim it as his own. His name is Curtis Ford. And we've been following him. We've been monitoring his activities. We've been doing a bunch of other things, and listen, man. This one's for you, Curtis. I don't forget. I don't forget the threats that you've made towards my family. I don't forget the shit you put my family through, the drugs that you peddled in my community. Like, I'm not going to forget this. Okay? Because of Curtis, back to the audience, because of Curtis, and the fact that we were calling him out and causing his business harm, he would have these drug addicts going around the neighborhood asking other people and inquiring with tenants and neighbors and residents of our neighborhood, like, hey, we have a friend, he wants to know, what's the guy at the corner's name? Oh, what are his kids' names? Yeah, they were inquiring about all these different things. They were trying to build evidence on us. Not evidence on us, but they wanted to gather information on us. Like, oh, you know what I mean? And then it was weird because right around the time the kids started going back to school, all of a sudden you had, like, drug addicts coming out of the house around school hours watching. Okay? You had people driving by. Curtis drove by a couple times on his bike, and then he was like, we're watching you. We're watching you. You know what? Good. Watch. And they did. And they continued to watch, and then they had cars come by and roll down the window and be like, you really need to calm down. you really need to watch yourself, watch your step, right? Well, I'm not going to watch my step. I'm not going to pick up and move. This is my house. This is my neighborhood. Get the fuck out. And that is what our motto was since this whole ordeal started. And now, if you follow the channel, I've been reading the Bible. I've been praying a little bit. And you know what? I guess prayers work. I guess somebody up there is listening, because when I prayed for them out of my neighborhood, here's to you, big guy. I'm starting to believe a little bit more every single day. Which is funny, because before I started reading the Bible, I bought 10 Bibles. And that's something I told this gentleman this morning that I was speaking to, who's a friend of mine. And I said, hey, I was like, we've been dealing with this shit for so long. We've tried everything, to the point that I bought 10 Bibles. They're still sitting in my studio. And I was going to go over there and just hand them out to people, because we've done everything aside from handing out Bibles to these people. Like, I mean, we have done everything from call the police. We've had social workers come there. We've had caseworkers. Everything that we've done over there has come out of my pocket to try to help and try to get this remediated. We've tried aggression. We've tried helping hands. We've tried just everything. The entire gambit we have tried. And to no avail. To no avail, except for apparently prayer. So yeah. I mean, this thing is, and then here's the other thing. I'm sure most of you out there have dealt with vampires, not in real life, but have like dealt with watching a movie or a TV series or read books about vampires, right? And then they bite you. And yeah, there's always some scene, right, where like the vampire bites somebody's child, right? And you're like, oh no. And, then they turned. And then they bite the person on scene, right? Or they bite the other loved one or another child. And you're like, it's consuming my family. And there is no loyalty amongst these monsters that these drugs have created, right? These drugs are essentially vampirism. And they bite somebody. That's why they want you to put caps on needles so you don't get bit. They bite somebody, and then that person turns into a soulless demon, and then they start biting more people. And here's a perfect example, is that we've already described that nobody in that house had custody of children. At least children that were of age to have custody of. And then we live near a school. We're walking distance from the school. There's a lot of kids that walk up and past my house, and I could probably pick some out of a lineup. If you said, like, hey, I don't know half their names, you know what I mean? Like, I probably know 2 names, because I know the neighbors with kids that go to the high school. But there's kids walking to the high school and the middle school, and there's a couple kids, and I don't know their parents, I don't know their names, and they stop into that house in the morning, and then they come out. And it's been happening since the beginning of the school year, and no one's doing anything about it. They're not visiting any of the parents, because there's no parents in there. It's just very funny that that's happening. And then it's like, man, drug dealers who live near schools, you know what they do? They sell drugs to kids, because you got to start them young, and they're going to trick them out. And that's what happens. And that's the shitty part. And that's why me and my wife make a stand. That's why me and my neighbors make a stand. It also saddens me, like one of the instrumental neighbors in starting the neighborhood watch with us, Emma Ramos. She was an awesome person. She was a foster mom. She passed away a few months ago, and it's with great sadness that she was not able to see the day that her neighborhood became ours again. And I'm sure she's smiling down on us, because Emma she was a traditional mom. She was a strong-willed Puerto Rican woman, and she had that, hey, She had that backhand that would come up and, hey, don't talk to me that way. They did not speak. Those drug addicts did not speak kindly of her. They would call her fat. They called her the C word, and she took it and she grinned. And she grinned. Because she knew. She knew that they'd get there someday. Dealers and the drug addicts leave your neighborhood. Eventually they leave your neighborhood in a body bag with a backpack full of their only life's possessions because, you know, their needles got incinerated. I'm hardened to the situation, and you can see why. It's not just, you can't just sit there and say, hey, you can't say that because blah blah blah. No, you just heard 21 and a half minutes of my rant about this. And if you follow the channel, you know we've been dealing with this nonsense forever. They leave garbage on the streets. They leave needles on the streets. They stalk and harass when you try to prevent them from doing their drugs. They're biting kids, turning them into vampires too. Like, and that, you know what? This isn't the end. This isn't the end. Eventually that house is going to come down. And here's the other part of this little video we're doing here. And I'm probably going to break this up into shorts because as a community member, as a person who used to be a former alderman, you know what's going to happen to that house? It's going to have to come down. What's going to happen is the landlord's not going to take it down. The property owner's not going to take it down. The city's going to have to step in and take that down. And what happens when the city takes it down? They're going to, if they do it right, they'll be able to get a personal judgment against that owner. It's an LLC, so I don't know how they're going to do that. But they'll get a personal judgment against that owner, or that LLC, and then it could just be disbanded and its debts are absolved. And then, what do you do? What do you do? You put it on their taxes. You put it on their taxes. You can put it on their taxes. Well, I mean, if there's no other assets by the LLC, you'd have to put it, just rely on that and putting it on their taxes. And then what are you going to do? It goes to taxes. The county clears the loan, clears the lien. The taxpayers pay for it. And here's my other plight. And here's something that I hope the new mayor understands, and I hope that the Common Council takes recognition of, is that there's nothing on the books that's going to prevent, let's say this person had insurance to cover the property and their losses. Well, if he was bank financed, the bank would require it, right? And it would be to clear the loan. And then if there's any money left over, if there's a demolition line item in that insurance, it would cover that. If he had insurance and he didn't owe any money to a bank, he gets to take that money. And there's nothing that forces the city. I know code enforcement's talked about it, but there is zero teeth to make an insurance company pay the city for rental property or personal property or whatever. It doesn't matter. There's no teeth that allows that to happen. So what ends up happening is the landlord takes the money and lets the house sit. The city tears it down, puts a lien against the LLC. Meanwhile, the money has been siphoned out of the LLC, and by the time you actually get a judgment against this LLC or this individual, the money's gone. It's gone. Like a cigarette. By the time you smoke a cigarette, that money's been shifted. It's been zelled somewhere else. And there's nothing on the books that allows them to stop that from happening. So I don't know what you do. But as a taxpayer, I don't like it. I would like to see a vacant lot there in place of that monstrosity of a house that's been, you know, a tombstone of dreams and what have you for years. I would hate. My neighborhood is better off with a vacant lot there. For safety concerns, it's not better off with a burnt down house still standing, burnt up house still standing, but it's better off than it was as a property that was allowing people to live there and do drugs and corrupt our neighborhood like cancer. So I'm appreciative of that. I'm not appreciative of, and I hope that owner did not have insurance, because the city wouldn't get it anyways, so why not? I would hope that owner did not have insurance, not to screw the community, but just so that he doesn't gain from it either. What he did to our community by his negligence, by his lack of involvement, is just as bad. Not just as bad, but almost as bad as the people that were there. So, we're going to be doing a whole bunch. Here's your content, guys. That house coming down, that house burning down yesterday, is just the beginning of the content that's coming out of this channel. I've been putting a dossier together, and here's your premiere trailer right here. We've been putting a dossier together about all the individuals that have been in that house. They've been coming and going out of that house. Mainly main players, but we have lists of people that have come and gone out of that house, including the kingpin himself. So, Curtis, I'm not going to forget you. And my wife was reluctant about me name dropping and calling you guys out because she was a little afraid. But we had a gun cleaning party this summer in the front yard, and, well, my aim's not so bad, so I'm not too worried about defending my home. Never have been. I'm not going to start now. I'm going to defend my home. Come get some. I've got new surveillance cameras up everywhere. And I'm not afraid of you. And I'm not talking to you, Curtis. I'm talking to the entire organization that your buddy, Adonis Linder, has put together. Adonis, we're coming from you. We're coming for you and your entire network. So stay tuned, because we're going to break down how Adonis, who is Olean's biggest drug dealer, he moves more drugs into our area than any other individual. We're going to break down where he's owned property. We're going to break down his past criminal records. We're going to break down how he came to being the drug kingpin of Olean himself, how he operates, where he operates, what he operates in, who his associates are. So if you're an associate of Adonis Linder, I'd make yourself scarce, because you're about to be on Kevin's Netflix, baby. We are taking down your organization. One drug addict at a time, putting out the entire... Man, you're going to be so popular. I'm going to make you so famous that not And none of your suppliers out of Buffalo are going to want to touch you because you're going to get them burnt, man. You're going to get them burnt. You're going to be too hot for anyone to touch. So, congratulations, Adonis. You're famous. You're famous. And for a little town like Olean, that says a lot. So, stay tuned, gang. We'll be breaking this down. And I hope you enjoy, as this is what drug dealers have pushed me to do. They've pushed me to dismantle their organizations. Dismantle. Goodbye. You're not selling drugs in my neighborhood. You're not selling drugs in my city. Because I live here. My kids live here. I'm going to defend my city from your filth. So, with that said, guys, we'll catch you guys next time on Life 22.